Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to this special Daredevil Born Again Episode 2 post-game show here on the John Campea YouTube channel. Good to have you guys here. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. Thanks a lot for joining me here tonight, guys. And as the title of this video gives away, this is the after show. We're going to talk in full spoilery detail of the episode of Daredevil Born Again Episode 2 that we just watched. If you have not seen Daredevil Born Again Episode 2, then you might want to just add this to your watch later list and come back and watch a bit later. Otherwise, you've been warned. We're going to talk about tonight's episode in full open spoilery detail. And we're just getting started. We have over like 200 and something people in the live chat right now. Good to have you guys here already. Hello to Michael, A. Marcellus, Paul, Robert, Shio. I'm Jim, Hermes, everybody who's here. Good to have you guys here tonight. All right. Here's how the show's going to go tonight. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about how I felt about the episode, the things I liked about it, maybe the things I didn't like about it. And then we're going to spend the majority of our time tonight doing what we're here to do, which is to take your thoughts, observations, and questions about Daredevil Born Again Episode 2. Now, this is not the John Campea Show. This is not an open discussion about anything. If you guys are going to send in a question, and if you want to send in a question, use the super chat feature in the live chat. Please make sure it's specifically about Daredevil. Do not write in tonight about your Avengers Doomsday theories. Do not write in tonight about who you think they should cast as James Bond. Tonight we're here to discuss Daredevil Born Again Episode 2. You can ask about theories about Episode 3 or something like that, or a question about the last episode. Sure. Just make sure you stick your questions and comments only to Daredevil. That would be much appreciated. Thank you. Okay. With that all said, let me talk about tonight's episode. Guys, I loved it. I loved this episode. I really did like the first two episodes. Like, I'm totally on board with the first two episodes. But it's not like I was falling over myself, like totally 1,000% engrossed. Like, I really liked the first two episodes. I thought they were really good. They could have been better, but I really enjoyed them, right? But tonight's episode, tonight was episode 3. That's right. Last week was week 1. This is week 2. So I was thinking episode 2. Tonight was episode 3. Who was in the live chat? Ryan Cleary pointed that out. That's right. Tonight was episode 3. Again, I just got confused because it's week number 2. But tonight's episode was bonkers good. Absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal episode. And we didn't even have Daredevil beating the crap out of anybody. And it was great. You know, the first thing that stands out to me, what they did great that She-Hulk failed at. Now, I know She-Hulk was supposed to be more of a comedy, but you still should have given us some great courtroom drama in She-Hulk. The name of the show was She-Hulk Attorney at Law. You should have had some good courtroom drama. Now, listen, there were a lot of other problems with She-Hulk other than the lack of good courtroom drama, but I loved seeing Matt in a great courtroom drama, ripping it up, winning his cases, even when things aren't going his way, even when the odds are stacked against him, even when he loses his star witness who gets scared after looking at all the cops. And you know what? Frankly, I don't blame his witness. Like, you're sitting in there and you realize all those cops want to kill you. I get it. The witness got scared, got intimidated, all that kind of stuff. But even when he lost his star witness, he does a Matlock. He pulls one out of the bag last second, and he wins it in the bottom of the ninth. And I loved it because that's a key part of Matt. One of the things that makes Daredevil the series so great is not just the one side of his personality, Daredevil. It's also Matt. Matt is a great character. And for them to really let the lawyer part of him shine, because we got him beating the crap out of people in the first 2 weeks, right? In the first week, I mean. A lot of him beating the crap out of people. This one, they lean more into his mental muscle, right? And got to see him doing things in the court system. And see, that's also key. Because remember the little talk he gives to Hector in the prison cell. There are other ways for you to help. That's something that Matt is really convinced of right now at this point in his life, is that I can do good without being the devil of Hell's Kitchen. I can still do good. I can affect change. I can help people. But doing within the system that he says while having dinner sometimes works, right? And he came up against that at the end of episode 2 last week when he had to beat the crap out of those cops. But he's still kind of holding on to that idea that I can still do good. And then he wins this case. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think the death of Hector is going to be a real come to Jesus moment for Matt. Because he came face to face with it at the end of the last episode, having to beat up the cops, right? But he still held firm. Like, even though he had to beat the crap out of him, he was anguished about it, and he still decided to stay firm. I can still do more good as Matt the lawyer, right? I can still do good as Matt the lawyer. But once he finds out that even though he won and the system worked and he got an innocent man off, that innocent man still got gunned down in the streets. I think that's going to be a key come to Jesus moment for Matt, where he's going to have to really question that identity of I can do good without being the devil of Hell's Kitchen. And I think we're going to start to see that come around. And that's powerful. Anyway, let me talk for a second about, I'm forgetting the name of the actor who played Hector, who's tragically passed away. That performance was great. And can I just touch on this for a second? I don't know how many of the rest of you caught this. If you stayed long enough in the credits, because when the credits started to roll on this episode, the music played for a second and then it went quiet. And then they started playing the whistling song of the frogs from Puerto Rico. And that nearly broke me. Because I thought that scene, as he's just telling that story, right, as sitting in the prison cell, it was a beautiful story. But then at the very end, after we see him get murdered and gunned down in the streets, just for being somebody who wanted to help people, for them to just throw in that quick little thing of the whistling song of those frogs, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I got emotional. Listening to that. Now, we'll talk in a minute about the guy who shot him walking up to the camera and he's seeing the Punisher logo. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that I thought the performance of that dude playing Hector was so good. It felt real. You know, again, it's kind of funny. The first 2 episodes of Daredevil and this one too feel so grounded and so authentic and so real that whenever they bring up the mentioned, and of course, his magical amulet that gives him his super strength, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's a little bit off-putting, but still, I mean, he carried it, right? He really just felt like a man, and I loved it. And of course, Charlie Cox always kills it. They lean more into Charlie Cox in this one instead of Vincent D'Onofrio. Remember, the first 2 episodes almost felt a little bit more like a Kingpin story. This one, Kingpin definitely has a presence, but it definitely focused more on Matt. I thought that was a good thing for them to do. The whole little thing about the gangs are starting to get out of sorts, that's going to be a problem. We are 3 episodes in, though, and they still haven't really touched on Muse. My impression, and nobody said this was the fact, it was just my impression, I think probably a lot of you guys too, that kind of the main villain of this series was going to be Muse. And if you know the comic book story, that's some traumatic stuff. But they still haven't really touched on Muse. They dropped a couple little crumbs in the first 2 episodes. So I'm a little bit surprised we still haven't really gotten into the Muse thing. But still, showing the deterioration of the gang wars starting to go off in the underworld. The fact that some people are starting to think we don't have to fear Kingpin. Well, Wilson's going to put them in their place. There is a scene coming. There's a couple of scenes coming. There's definitely a scene coming where whoever this Adam guy is, he's going to have a very bad day. Adam is definitely, whoever Adam is definitely at some point going to have a very, very bad day, but Wilson won't kill him because he promised Vanessa that he wouldn't kill Adam, but he didn't say he wouldn't break every bone in his body. So there's that. But there's also a comeuppance coming to all these street hustlers, to all these street gangs who think they don't have to respect the Kingpin anymore. Oh, there's a day coming. There's a great saying that a preacher I used to like listening to who would say this: "It's Friday, but Sunday's coming." I love that saying. I've always liked that saying, and I think it's very, very applicable right now to these street gangs who think they can justify Kingpin now. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Kingpin's coming, and there's going to be a reckoning, and I cannot wait for it. I can't remember the last time I was so excited and cheered for the villain so bad in a show as I do for Kingpin. Not against Matt, but against all the other Underworld guys. I can't wait for Kingpin to clean some house. That's going to be awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the giant skull-sized elephant in the room that happened at the very end of the episode. White Tiger gets murdered. And as we saw glimpses of some of the cops having Punisher tattoos, one on the wrist, one on the neck, not very subtle, is it? First of all, would cops would they really tattoo themselves like that so people can identify them? Anyway, so little things like the wrist, the neck. Then at the end of this thing, the guy who kills White Tiger walks in, he's got the Punisher thing. Now, I've seen everybody online in the last hour saying, well, clearly that's not Frank. Are we really so sure about that? Now, let me be very, very clear here for a second. I am not saying that that was definitely Frank. I'm not saying that it was. But don't be so sure it wasn't. There have absolutely been times in movies and even in comic book stuff where a character was deceived into doing something they wouldn't normally do. It would not shock me if we get into next week and the following week and we find out that bad information was in a backhanded way fed to Frank. Oh, we got a cop killer who beat the justice system. And this cop killer has done this and this and this and blah, blah, blah. And listen, because it's not like we haven't seen that story hook used before, right? Where an otherwise kind of good guy was tricked into doing something they wouldn't normally have done. Like, I'm sure if Frank knew Hector's real story and the true character of Hector, he would never do that. But is it possible that bad information was given to Frank and Frank decided to come and do something about it? Again, I'm not saying that it was Frank. Let's be very, very clear. I'm not saying it was Frank. I'm just saying that the show seems to set itself up to make us believe it wasn't him, right? By not showing the face, only showing the symbol, I feel like the show is trying to make us believe it wasn't Frank. Which makes me think maybe it's a possibility that it could have been a deceived, misled Frank. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I just feel like the fact that they didn't show us the face intentionally was them maybe misdirecting us into making us believe it was somebody else and not actually Frank. So again, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We'll find out when it comes around. Also, I'm getting more and more into even though that we didn't get a lot of it this episode, the Vanessa and Wilson stuff has been great. I've loved the Vanessa and Wilson stuff. Finding out that, how she's feeling marginalized. And I have a feeling like at this point, and it's only when Fisk is talking to Vanessa that I get the sense that there's a bigger play here that Fisk has, and he's not sharing it with Vanessa. He just keeps talking about, I have a grander plan here and all that kind of stuff, and he's not sharing it with her. And I feel like at some point in the show, I think there's going to be a big revelation of what the grander scheme is, and it ain't about him being mayor. And then Vanessa's going to be like, You truly are the man I fell in love with. I don't know, something silly like that. Look, at the end of the day, one of the things that I was really worried about, and I've talked about this before on the John Campea Show and last week on the Daredevil After Show. One of the things I've been really worried about is, listening to the Daredevil Born Again showrunner in the weeks leading up to the show launching. He kept talking about, there's so much action, so much action. None of this boring talky stuff. I don't want to see the guys talking. I want to see action. And I started to worry that, dude, do you not get what made the original Netflix series so good? It was the talky. The action was great. It added to it, but it was the drama that made Daredevil so great on Netflix, combined with the brutality and all that kind of stuff to go along with it. But all of that was built on the foundation of great story and great character. And this week really put my fears to rest because there was no big action sequence. I think this was the best of the 3 episodes, and there wasn't a single fight. Wasn't a single fight. Best of the 3 episodes, not a single fight. It was absolutely fantastic. It was a true show built on true narrative, built on true story, built on true dialogue. And I was absolutely riveted to it. The best of the 3 episodes, and there wasn't a single fight in it. I loved it. And one of the reasons why I loved it so much, it was because they just really leaned into the story. Say, see, we can do the action. We can have the bone breaking and all that stuff that a high school kid could do. High school kid could direct something, say, now break his arm, now break his leg. Anybody can do that. But can you build solid story and narrative around it so when that gritty action happens, it has narrative emphasis? And they did it. And I feel very good about the show now. I've been a little bit nervous about it, but I feel very, very good about the show now. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing where it's going to go. Let's see what else. I guess one of the things that made me scratch my head a little bit about what happened was that in the prison, Matt tells Hector, look, even if we win, your days of White Tiger are over, man. And it would have been nice to see Hector at least wait a couple of days before putting on the white. I get it. Hector told him, you're like, it's like you're asking me to stop breathing. I can't do that. It's who I am. I get that, but you would think that after winning his freedom by the skin of his teeth, and Matt got him off the charges and saved him, and the one thing Matt told him was, if I get you out of this, you got to stop being White Tiger. You'd think that there would have at least been maybe a week or two that he would have waited before putting on the costume again. Instead, he just, put it on as soon as he got out and went back out on the street. And by the way, put it on and just walking down the sidewalk. Do. Like, I don't know. But anyway, aside from that, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It was fantastic. I loved it. And now I absolutely cannot wait to see what they do with this next week. I just can't wait now. I am so stoked. I am so on board. This was the episode that did it for me. And wait to see where they decide to go. Okay. With that down, guys, we are now going to go over to what we're going to do for the majority of our evening, which is taking your thoughts about the episode, your observations, your theories, your topics, your questions. All, again, please keep it to talking about Daredevil. That's what we're here to do tonight. So let's jump over and start taking some of these, shall we? We are going to start off with, where are we at? There we are. Okay. We're going to start with Neurostrike. And Neurostrike sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you for that, Neurostrike. Appreciate that. And Neurostrike writes, I know mention of White Tiger's amulet threw you off. Yes, it did. But y'all often ponder what life is like for people of the MCU. Acknowledging such elements enriches the reality of living in such a world and enriches the storytelling. R.I.P. Kamar. Oh, listen, I 100% agree with you. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying that I think they shouldn't mention the amulet, and they shouldn't mention that there's a guy swinging around dressed like a spider, or there's a Spider-Man out there. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is, when I said that, was that they did such a good job making it feel so grounded and making it feel so real. They did such a good job of that, that once you get well into the episodes, like last week, you get well into the episodes and they're talking, my client, ladies and gentlemen, he didn't even have his magical amulet that gives him super strength and speed. Like, it's really a commentary on how good of a job they did making the world feel so real, that then when all of a sudden they mention the magical amulet that gives him super strength and speed, it was a little off-putting. Again, I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that. I'm just saying that's really more of a commentary of how good of a job they did of making it feel like a real world thing and not like a superhero world thing. And that's a good thing. I meant that in a good way. All right. Thank you so much for that, Neurostrike. And thank you for supporting us on that level, man. All right. Next up, we've got Steven, who writes, awesome episode. Love the episode, man. Obviously, that wasn't Frank at the end. I just wonder if they are trying to make it seem obvious that it wasn't Frank. Oh, it's obviously not Frank. Obviously, it's not Frank. I just wonder if that might be a little bit of a misdirect. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I don't think it's so obvious that it's not him. Anyway, the ending was so sad, though, and I wanted to see White Tiger do his thing. Very happy regardless. I mean, there's a couple of things that really added to the sadness of it. Sadness of this character that we really started to like, dying so tragically in the streets. Seeing the character die when we know that the actor who played him passed away before the show began to air. And then the very, very end, when during the credits, they play the sounds of the frogs that he told the story about. It was beautifully done. It was beautifully set up. And yeah, one of the reasons why I really love the episode, man. All right. Next up, we've got A. Marcells, who also sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, A. Marcells, for supporting us on that level, dude. He writes, this hit home. I'm a native of New York City and of Puerto Rican descent. Well, this was really right up your alley then, man. I lived in that same neighborhood in the Heights that White Tiger was from. That train station is a piece of shit in real life. That was the tame version, LOL. You know, there's something, I think all of us as TV and movie fans, and I've talked about this a lot, especially since I live in the LA area, right? There's something when you're watching a movie or show and you actually see places and locations and places you've been and sidewalks you've actually walked on. You're right, that really bring it close to home. But then additionally, if it's in like your town and you have a character that's got the same kind of background that you have and all that kind of stuff, it really does make it hit close to home, especially when you have experience with it, right? So that's pretty cool that you had that, A. Marcells. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, dude. And thank you for supporting us again. All right. Next up, A. Marcells writes in again. He says, the Punisher is going to go ape shit when he finds they are killing and abusing good people using his symbol. Now, yeah, that's something we brought up last week, right? Was that like when this is a little bit of art imitating life, because, you know, we brought this up before, but we asked like over a year ago that if they do bring, or maybe it's like 2 years ago, when they do bring Punisher back, like, are they even going to use the famous Punisher symbol? Because there have been groups of people that have co-opted that symbol and taking it for themselves. And will Disney want to have that be a part of it? But instead of avoiding it, they've kind of taken a little bit of real life, or at least an interpretation of real life, and brought that into the art. And now you're right, Frank is going to go crazy. Now, my question is, the reason I bring up that maybe it's a possibility that was Frank who killed White Tiger. Did somebody manipulate Frank and deceive Frank into thinking White Tiger was a part of that? That White Tiger was part of what's going around and using his image to kill people, or using, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways they can go with that. But regardless, yes, just like the way I'm looking forward to Kingpin deciding to get his hands on the gangs who want to disrespect him and setting things straight. I'm also very excited about what happens when Frank gets into a room of some people who have co-opted his image to do the things that they're doing and hurting innocent people. Yeah, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. It is Friday, but Sunday's coming. And so there's going to be some shit hitting the fan, my friends. All right. Next up, we've got Seconds from Disaster, who writes, oh no, did I skip over? Billy first. Billy B writes, where are we? Okay. I know I'm hooked when Daredevil has no appearance at all and my eyes are still glued to the scene. The drama is working so well for me. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Matt is Daredevil. It's not like Daredevil hasn't shown up. It's not like, say, what's a good example? It's not like a Shazam situation where Billy is Billy and Shazam is Shazam. Yes, they're one and the same person, but Billy's just a kid until he turns into Shazam. Matt is Daredevil, right? He is Daredevil. He's not just Daredevil once the costume goes on. He's Daredevil all the time. That's what we found out last week at the end of episode 2, when the cops came into the apartment, decided they wanted to beat up a blind man. He's still Daredevil. Whether the costume is on or not, he's still Daredevil. But I totally get what you're saying. Like, we never for 1 minute had Matt in the costume running around, beating up a bunch of fools. And yet, to me, it was the best episode of the season so far. Best episode of the season so far. And you're right. That's a real testament to how good the writing has been. The writing has been great, and it just seems to be getting better. All right. Next up. Now we go to Seconds from Disaster, who writes, how do you think Matt is going to deal with the fact that he ousted White Tiger, which got him killed, especially after his own identity got Foggy killed? It's going to be kind of like what I said in my intro there, Seconds from Disaster. It's going to be a true, real come to Jesus moment for Matt. He almost had one when he had to break his non-violent streak and beat up those dirty cops. But this is on a different level, because it's going to be several things that are hitting him, right? It's the fact that he really believed that he could just do good as Matt and work within the system and justice will prevail. Well, he won the court case and then he got immediately killed. So he's going to have to wrestle with that. He's also going to have to wrestle with the fact that it was his gamble in outing him as White Tiger that got him killed. Now, listen, one of his friends, I'm sure this is going to happen in the show. Maybe his partner will say to him, he'll be having this big guilt thing and saying to one of his partners, like, I'm the one who decided to reveal his identity and that's what got him killed. Now, one of his friends is going to say to him, if you didn't reveal his identity, he was going to get convicted and he would have been killed the first day in jail. The cops or the guards or whatever, as a cop killer in jail, he would have been killed anyway. Like, that's what one of his friends are going to try to say to him. If you didn't out him as White Tiger, he would have gone to jail and he probably would have been dead on the first day. So that's probably a conversation and the guilt racking. But the key thing here about Matt, and FNR just made a really good point here, said it's a hero's curse. You fundamentally cannot save everyone. And it's true. And I love it when hero tropes lean into that at some point a hero's got to learn there are some fights you're just not going to win. You can't save everyone. And in this situation, it was a no-win for Matt. If you don't out him, he's going to go to prison and get murdered. If you do out him, it's going to be risky for him out there as White Tiger. But anyway, you're right. Next week, episode 4 we are going to see a lot of, as Chris Carr would say, a lot of Catholic guilt. We're going to see a lot of Catholic guilt that Matt is going to have to wrestle with and comes to term with. It's going to be tough. All right. Next up, we got Julian Barris, who writes, am I the only one who saw the 2004 Punisher sitting in the courtroom the whole time? I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. 2004, are you talking about the actor? Who's the actor? who also came back to do Dirty Laundry. Who was the actor who played Punisher? Guys, I know there's like a 15-second delay, but if you guys in the live chat know who, is that who you're talking about? Was it Thomas Jane? Thank you, Robert. Robert Presser was the first. Did you see Thomas Jane in there? Is that who you meant? Was Thomas Jane in there? I'm going to have to go back and look now. If you're saying Thomas Jane was sitting in the courtroom, that would be kind of funny. I can't imagine that was the case, but if it was, that would be funny. All right. Next up, we got Cuss Cinema, who writes, don't be shocked if people start speculating that Miles Morales is not coming, is coming because one of the officers Matt uses to defend Hector was named Officer Morales. Yeah, that has not. So? Yeah, no, there is no. Listen, the head of Marvel streaming, Disney Plus streaming shows for Marvel, Brad Winterbaum. He's the head boss of all things Marvel. Like, he works directly for Kevin Feige. We talked about this on the John Campea Show the other week when he came out directly and addressed the question, like, will Spider-Man show up and all this kind of stuff. He made it in no uncertain terms. We cannot have a live action Spider-Man on our TV stuff. We can't have it. We're not allowed. That's a part of the deal with Sony. Well, what if it was the Miles Morales? No. There's no loopholes. There's no little loopholes. They made that firm in their contract, and the head of Marvel Television explicitly came out and said, the only thing we can do with Spider-Man is, like on television, is short form animation. We can't do feature-length animation. We can't do live action with him outside of our Tom Holland in the movies. We cannot have live-action Spider-Man on TV. He was very, very, very clear about that. And as Siku in the live chat is saying, Morales is a pretty common name. It's like Smith or whatever. It's a pretty common name, so I wouldn't... I wouldn't. So if you hear anybody say, I bet you Miles is going to show up, let them know that the head of Marvel Television has already specifically clarified that they're not allowed to have a live action Spider-Man on Disney Plus in a television show. They're not allowed to do it. It goes outside of the bounds of the contract with Sony. So there is absolutely zero chance that Miles Morales shows up, or any Spider-Man for that case, will show up in Daredevil. All right. But you're right, Cinema. There will be some people that will instantly want to jump to that. It's understandable. It's understandable. It is a shared cinematic universe. So it's understandable that you would hear the name and you'd think, oh, Miles is probably going to show up. I get it. But just let them know the head of TV already said not going to happen. All right. See, next up, we got Mr. I writes, loved this episode. My favorite thing was the small details. Hector's story about the frogs in Puerto Rico, so moving, man. Then to have the end credits be the only to be the sound of those frogs. Dude, again, like I said in my opening, it nearly broke me a little bit. Like I was like, oh my God, it's the song of the frogs. Like I was sitting watching it with Anne. And normally I'll stop it as soon as the credits start rolling, but we started talking about the episode, so we left the credits rolling. Then all of a sudden went quiet. And then you heard you just heard the whistling sound. I'm like, oh my God, it's the songs that Hector was talking about. And I could feel my heart breaking, man. I could totally feel my heart breaking in that moment. It was terrible. It was awesome, but it was terrible at the same time. All right. Next up, David Coca writes, Daredevil SVU in the criminal justice system. The people are represented by Matt Murdock, who prosecutes the offenders. This is his story. Dun dun. A little Law and Order there for you. Of course, he defends people. He doesn't prosecute anybody. Remember, Matt is a defense attorney. He does not prosecute people. But still, the fact that they're finally giving us some really good legal drama, some really good courtroom drama in the MCU. Again, they took a swing at it with She-Hulk, missed terribly. This one was great. I loved it. And dun dun indeed. All right. Next up, Mr. I writes in again. He says, I hope Fisk doesn't end up with a bad orange spray tan. I don't need to give any commentary about that. I will just let that sit there. All right. Let's see here. Anubis Genocide sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Anubis, for supporting us on that level, man. Appreciate that. And Anubis writes, Damn, White Tiger being killed by the Punisher, or more likely a Punisher ripoff. Again, it could be one or the other. They have some explaining to do either way. I mean, it's probably not Frank, but I'm just saying, don't write off the idea that it could be Frank, and there could be a really interesting backstory of what got him to that point. I'm just saying, just don't throw out the possibility of it. That's all I'm saying. Copycat took me by surprise. I thought for sure Hector would essentially be a stand-in for Blind Spot's role in the Muse arc. You know what? Here's the thing. And somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And maybe it was shown in episode 2. For some reason, I thought I remembered, and maybe I'm just wrong. I could be totally wrong about this. I thought I remembered some footage or some production photos of Matt talking to White Tiger Hector in prison, like not being held before trial, like when he was sitting in the cage with Matt, but like I thought literally in prison. And so I had it in my head when the courtroom drama was going on and the jury was about to read the verdict. I had in my head, well, they're about to say, we find the defendant guilty, because I thought I had it in my head that there was some production photos or something of Matt visiting him in prison and him going to try to prove his innocence or something like that. So I might have completely misremembered that. I probably did completely misremember that. Sharia is saying that was part of episode 2. Like I remember that conversation, but for some reason I had it in my head. Again, it would have been from a long time ago. I thought it was different. I thought the setting was a little bit different, and I thought it looked different than what we saw on the show. But again, I'm probably just not remembering it correctly. That's probably what it is. Anyway, next up. And thank you again, Anubis. Appreciate that, man. Next up, we got Shuvo, who writes, killing off White Tiger, another blow after Foggy. Yeah. And like I said, somebody else brought this up a little bit earlier. There is absolutely going to be turmoil for Matt, because there's absolutely a part of Matt that blames himself, obviously, for the death of Foggy. If he wasn't Daredevil, Foggy would be alive. And I'm sure he's had to wrestle with that for an entire year. Now, on top of that, to compound that, he's going to have to wrestle with, my choice to out Hector ultimately got him killed. And again, his friends will say to him, the cops were never going to let him live. He was a dead man regardless. If he got convicted and went to prison, he was dead. You got him acquitted and he's out on the streets. He chose to still go out as White Tiger. He was dead. That there's nothing you could have done, Matt. Just like it wasn't his fault that Foggy got killed, but Matt is going to hold himself responsible. That's what Catholic guilt does to you. And yeah, this is going to be a tough one for him. Again, these are all going to be little cracks in the armor that, he decided to put Daredevil away. He's going to fight this. He's going to fight within the system. He's going to try to do good as Matt Murdock, attorney at law, but the cracks are going to happen and Daredevil will be born again. All right. Let's see. Next up, Michael Enonucci writes, the courtroom scene in this episode makes the She-Hulk stuff look like a child wrote that show. Yep. No offense to the She-Hulk writers. I'll give all offense to the She-Hulk writers. They were terrible. By the way, this was supposed to be the original pilot. What, episode 3 was supposed to be the original pilot? Wait a second. Are you saying episode 3 was supposed to be the original pilot of Daredevil Born Again? Or are you saying episode 3 was supposed to be the original pilot of the original Netflix series? Yeah, either way. Yeah. Like, one of the things, I had such high hopes for She-Hulk because listen, when you really think about it, the kind of show that She-Hulk was supposed to be is right in Marvel's wheelhouse, right? But it was a show that would allow, because She-Hulk is kind of this bonkers, fourth wall breaking, totally allowed to be silly kind of character who is also a lawyer, and you could do like a legal drama. And they said leading into it, it was going to be like Ally McBeal in the MCU. That's awesome. That is an amazing idea. That show could be fantastic. And it would have been fantastic if they actually had writers who knew how to write comedy. If in this legal procedural comedy, they actually had writers who could write legal procedural comedy, it could have knocked it out of the park. And listen, I've always said this. I will give She-Hulk credit where it's due. It had moments. She-Hulk had a couple of really good moments. I will give it that. But when you have a show that's trying to be funny and it fails to be funny, there's very little that's more difficult to watch. And when you're trying to, and you say this is going to be, listen, Ally McBeal was a comedy, but it was also great legal drama at the same time. That's why Ally McBeal was so great. And their courtroom stuff was minimal. And when they did have courtroom stuff, it was pathetic. And then when they did try to be funny, which was the whole time, 99% of the time it failed. Anyway, I loved this courtroom stuff. It was great. It's not trying to be Ally McBeal in the MCU. It was Law and Order in the MCU. And they have writers who nailed it. They had writers who nailed it, whereas She-Hulk, unfortunately, had absolutely the wrong writers. And so I'm 100% in agreement with you, Michael. All right. We're going to take one more question, and then we're going to take just a few minute break as we thank some sponsors, pay some bills, and give you guys a chance to run to the bathroom. We've been going almost 45 minutes already. So At the Movies writes, the conversation, Wilson and Vanessa are having the conversation they should have with the therapist, but they can't. Yep. Now, I mean, I was wondering about that. I was wondering... okay, so the first thing that was going through my head about that was the conversation they were having before the therapist came in the room. I had the exact same thought as you did At the Movies. My first thought was they should be having this conversation with their therapist. And then the thought, I'm not a therapist, was, well, isn't there some confidentiality? But even with doctors or therapists or whatever, if you become, as the therapist or the doctor or whatever, come into knowledge of crimes that are going to be committed, you are obligated to report that. So clearly they're talking about running a criminal underworld. There's things they can't even say to their therapist. But you're right. In theory, that's the type of stuff, the type of relationship building exercises they should be having with their therapist. And that's definitely something they should have done, but they can't do it because she'd be legally obligated to report it. If they started talking about any plans for criminal enterprises, she would be obligated, I believe, to report it. So that makes that thing kind of tough. All right, guys. Listen, we still have more of your questions to get to. But before we do, we're going to pay some bills around here and take a second, give you guys a chance to talk amongst yourselves, run to the bathroom, go refill your drink like I'm going to do, as we take a couple of minutes here to thank a few sponsors of tonight's episode. Our friends at NordVPN, at Ridge Wallet, and at Kikoff. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor for today's episode, Ridge. All right guys, let's talk wallets for a second. If you are still using that bulky, falling apart, overstuffed leather wallet, then it's time for an upgrade. I've had my eye on Ridge wallets for a couple of years now, and I finally recently made the switch to it, and I am absolutely never going back. This thing looks great, it's sleek, ultra minimalist, and can hold up to 12 cards plus cash, all without bulking up my pockets. It's made from high performance materials like carbon fiber and titanium, meaning it's built to last a lifetime. Ridge will even back it with a lifetime warranty. And this thing has the dual combo of looking great and being far more comfortable than that thick wallet. Because there's no win with the thick wallet, right? Like if you put it in your back pocket, it's uncomfortable to sit down, and it looks absolutely stupid in the front of your pants if you shove it into your front pocket. And right now, Ridge is having their once-a-year anniversary sale. Get up to 40% off at ridge.com/Campea. Just head over to ridge.com/Campea to see their biggest sale of the year. Now, after you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that I sent you. Once again, that's ridge.com/Campea. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, NordVPN. All right, let's be real. There's nothing worse than wanting to stream your favorite show or watch a live game only to find out it's blocked in your country. But guess what? With NordVPN, that is never a problem. With just one click, you can switch your virtual location and access content from anywhere in the world. I have loved using NordVPN. Whether I'm traveling and using public Wi-Fi or just shopping online, NordVPN keeps my personal info safe and private. By switching my location, I can even save money on flights, hotels, and subscriptions. It's like a cheat code for getting the best deals. NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, so there's no buffering when I'm streaming. Plus, their threat protection feature blocks malware, trackers, and phishing attempts, keeping my devices safe 24/7. And with just one account, I can protect up to 10 devices, so my whole setup is covered. So to get the best discount on your NordVPN plan, head to nordvpn.com/John Campea, and our link will even give you 4 extra months for free on the 2-year plan. Plus, there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Links in the description. Check it out now. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Kikoff. Man, time flies, doesn't it? 1 minute you're reminiscing about your last vacation, and the next you're thinking about major life goals like buying a car, getting that dream home. But if your credit isn't where it needs to be, those goals can feel out of reach. And that's where Kikoff comes in, the #1 credit building app in the App Store that makes it easy, affordable, and stress-free to build credit fast. And that's exactly why I love Kikoff. They give you a credit line for just building credit, not for spending. Your on-time payments get reported to the 3 major credit bureaus, helping you improve your credit mix and payment history, 2 of the biggest factors in credit growth. If your credit is under 600, you could see a jump of about 28 points in your first month. No credit check, no hidden fees, no interest, just smart credit building. Building credit can happen faster than you expect with Kikoff. Don't wait. Get your first month for just $1 at getkikoff.com/Campea. That's kickoff without the C. Get 80% off at getkikoff.com/Campea. Must sign up via getkickoff.com/Campea to activate offer. Offer applies to new customers first month only, subject to approval. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions may apply. Point stat based on Equifax Vantage Score 3.0 changes for Kikoff users starting under 600 who made their first on-time payment between January of 2021 and March of 2024. Payment and credit activity outside Kikoff can have an impact on your credit. Individual results may vary. And thank you to our friends at Kikoff, NordVPN, and of course Ridge for sponsoring the John Campea YouTube channel. All right, guys. Hey, just so you know, I've already seen somebody ask, I have turned off the super chats. The super chats have been turned off. We have enough questions for the evening. I wanted to go not too much more than an hour tonight, so I think we'll come in right about there. So yes, let's now get things picked up with the remaining of the questions that we have, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with, where are we at? We are at Chazarus, who writes, loving the show length. When their trial ended, I was afraid the show was done. A normal Disney Plus show would have cut to credits. Okay, again, if you guys watch my show regularly, one of my biggest frustrations, even with some of the Disney Plus shows that I enjoy, one of my biggest frustrations with the Disney Plus shows is the runtimes are anemic. They're absolutely anemic most of the time. They're these short, like you wait all week for an episode and you have maybe a watch party, you invite some friends over, and then literally it feels like the show starts, you get up to refill the popcorn, and by the time you sit down, the credits are rolling. And like episodes can't have proper, like sitcoms can do that, that's fine. But like dramas, like then every episode needs to have its own beginning, middle, and end. And it's always just felt cheaped out. Tonight's episode 3, was the shortest of the episodes, and it was 47 minutes. 47 minutes, not counting credits and everything like that, but still. A lot of times with these Disney Plus shows, it'll be like a 33-minute runtime, not including, and that includes credits and all that kind of stuff. So to have them be like 59 minutes, 50 minutes, and 47 minutes, it's really good. I am really, now I hope they continue that. Again, I don't need every episode to be 50 minutes. It's okay to have 1 or 2 that are like 40 minutes, 39 minutes, 41 minutes. That's fine. But I'm really liking the runtimes because again, this amount of a runtime allows every episode in and of itself, even though each episode is just 1 chapter of the story, it allows the episode to feel like its own piece of content, that it has its own beginning, middle, and end that then lead into the next episode. And it's really good. I'm liking the way that's happening so far, and I hope they continue to do it. All right. Next up, we've got Anubis Genocide, who writes, I wonder if the next episode we'll see Frank. I can't wait to see him wreck some fools. Yes, because we're getting into episode 4. My guess is we still don't see Frank next week. I know everybody's waiting for Frank. But remember, this is the Daredevil show, not Daredevil and Punisher. But again, I'm just guessing, pure speculation. I don't think we see him next week yet. Maybe he does. I hope we do. The more we get of Punisher, the better to me. The more screen time for John Bernthal, the better for me. I just don't think we're going to see him quite yet. Or maybe right at the very end. I think Michael Gonzalez just said that too. Maybe just at the end of the episode, he finally kind of pops up. That could be, I'm thinking more like episode 5, maybe episode 6. But we'll see. But again, we haven't seen Frank yet. We're now through 3 episodes. No Frank, no Muse. I mean, not really, at any rate. And we got to be getting close to that stuff. We got to be getting close. All right. Next up, we've got Sir Z, who writes, I don't think it was Frank that killed White Tiger. I mean, I don't really think it was Frank either. I'm just saying let's wait to see next week's episode. I'm just saying it's still a possibility, but I agree. I don't think it is either, but I think it's still a possibility that killed White Tiger. He was baited into going to help a lady screaming for help. That's a good point. Frank would not have done that, in my opinion. You know what? That is a great point. That's a great point. Because, okay, let's say they did what I was maybe speculating they could have done, which is deceive Frank. Well, if you've convinced Frank one way or the other that this White Tiger is a monster, he's a cop killer, he's doing all these dirty things under the guise of being a hero and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let's say he did that. They tricked him that way. Well, if you've convinced Frank that White Tiger is actually a homicidal, murderous monster, then the way to lure him into an alley is not by making it sound like there's a girl in trouble. Because you only think that works if you believe that White Tiger's a good guy. That's a very good point. That's a really, really good point. That's a very good counter to the possibility. So, well, maybe they deceive Frank. Well, if they deceive Frank, why is he using something that would only lure in a good man? If Frank thinks he's a good man, he wouldn't murder him. If he didn't think he was a good man, he wouldn't use a girl crying for help to be the bait. It's a good point. I still think there are possibilities out there, but that's a very, very good point, Sir Z. Well thought out. All right. Next up, we go to Xaldir writes, I'm guessing not actually Frank, guessing this is why he comes back. Also guessing this is what the jumping off point for the Punisher show could be. Okay, couple things to keep in mind. Number 1, there is no Punisher show. It's going to be a one-shot 30 to 40 minute special, right? It's not a full-length movie. It's not a series. It's a one-shot special that's coming next year. I don't think, since it's a year away, that anything that happens in Daredevil is going to be the jump-off point for that one special. And again, remember, it's not a show. I've seen some other people say that too, that think, oh, there's a new Punisher series coming next year. Remember, it's not a Punisher series. It's not a Punisher movie. It's a Punisher special, much like the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special and the Werewolf by Night special. Not full-length feature film length, not television series, just a quick little one-shot. And because it's that, I don't think anything that's happening now, more than a year before that thing comes out, is what's setting up those events. I think it's going to be a standalone Punisher story. I don't think it's going to be a dangling thread from this season that we got to wait till next year for this 35-minute special. I think that Punisher thing that John Bernthal is doing is just a purely original idea. I think it's going to be its own standalone thing. And obviously, it's still the same Frank as is in Daredevil. I just don't think the stories are going to be connected there. That's all. All right. But we'll find out. We'll find out. Next up, we've got Jordan Yale writes, love the scene with Matt sitting home in the courtroom, holding his broken horn, had a very church-like feel sitting in the pew contemplating life. Yeah, and listen, the Catholicism, the faith background stuff of Daredevil is a very important thing to the character. Like, if you don't understand the faith aspect to Matt, then you don't really understand Daredevil, right? And so I think that's a very, very good observation about him sitting, because it did, even the lighting in that scene, when he walked into that empty courtroom alone, even the lighting of the scene felt more like a church atmosphere, right? It felt more like a church. And that's completely consistent with probably how Matt, quote unquote, sees it, right? He's having a crisis of faith, not of his Catholicism faith, but his faith in the system in that moment. And to create imagery and make it feel more like a place of worship and a church and stuff like that, I think that was very key. And I think that's a great observation you made there, Jordan. All right. I turned off the super chats a while ago, so this is now our last question of the night. Comes to us from Hamburglar, who writes, do you see Bullseye reappearing later on this season, or was he just essentially a plot device to get Foggy and Karen out of the show? You know, that's a good question. I'm going to guess we don't see him again. And the reason I'm going to guess we don't see him again is because I don't see the need to have him again. We got all this, because when you think about it, we're now like a quarter of the way through the series. We're now 3 episodes down. Because correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it's 12 episodes, right? It's 12 episodes. So if it's 12 episodes, we're a quarter of the way through the show already. We still have all the stuff with Matt. We got figuring out the stuff that happened with Hector, who killed Hector. We got all the stuff with Punisher and the dirty cops and the thing. We still got all the stuff with Fisk and, it's 9 episodes. That's right. It's Andor. It's Andor. That's 12 episodes. Sorry about that. Thank you. So we're a third. We're not just a quarter of the way through. We're already a full third of the way through the series. Right? So we've got all that stuff. We got all the Fisk stuff with him and Vanessa. We still have all the Fisk stuff with whatever his grand plan is. We got the Fisk stuff trying to deal with the gangs. And then we still have Muse. So, I mean, they could bring Poindexter back. They could bring him back into the series. I just don't know what would be the point. They seem to have a lot of ground to cover, and they're already a third of the way through. So maybe you will. It's possible. I just don't think. So somebody's saying, Antagonistic Anonymous saying in the live chat that there is Bullseye footage in the prison. I don't remember that. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't remember it. And that's fine. So maybe there is Bullseye footage in prison. So maybe he pops in for an episode. I don't know. Again, with only 6 episodes left and all this story stuff, they still haven't even really brought in Muse yet. Matt's got a whole bunch of character stuff he's dealing with. Fisk has got all that stuff he's still dealing with. I mean, there's so much unresolved stuff. It feels like there's just no room or reason to bring back Bullseye at this point. But if there is footage of him already like having a fight in a prison cell, then we probably are. I just don't know what the purpose of the character is at this point. But, we will see and we will find out. All right, guys, listen, still got a few minutes here. So even though we have gone through all the super chat questions, I'm going to take a couple of questions from you guys in the live chat. So if you look down into the live chat right now, if you have a question for me, see how I just formatted that? Do me a favor and write, and I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just going to pick a couple and that's it. But if you do have a question you want me to try to read, just put in all capital letters, question, : and then your question. That way I know you're asking me a question, not just chatting amongst yourselves. All right. So let's see what we've got in here. Again, I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I'll give you guys a second to put something in. Okay. Where are we at here? We're at Draven, who writes, what do you think the body count will be when Punisher shows up? High. Actually, here's the thing. I'm not sure whether Punisher's body count's going to be higher or whether Kingpin's body count's going to be higher once he decides to start disciplining the street gangs who forgot who the boss is. So it's going to be a competition. Does Punisher have the bigger body count, or does Kingpin ultimately get the bigger body count? Let's see. Where are we at? Okay, here we go. Rylan writes, will we see Foggy's death was faked? I don't know, man. Like when they announced that Foggy was coming back for season 2, again, Chris brought up, there is a comic book storyline. So there is some precedent where like the FBI faked his death, but like Matt literally heard his heart stop. His heart stopped, and then they sat on the sidewalk there for a few minutes as Foggy was dead. They are bringing him back because he's coming back in season 2. So I don't know. Are they going to say they faked his death? Are they going to say him coming back is going to be a result of multiverse stuff? Because it is the MCU. It doesn't feel a lot like the MCU, but they are now in the MCU, and multiversal nonsense is a part of it. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. I really don't. Okay. Next up, Brian writes, question. Hey, John, was Kingpin the one that got White Tiger killed at the end of it? I don't think it was. I think we are led to maybe think it was, but I think it's really the dirty cops on their own did it. I mean, obviously, right? We saw the dirty cops wearing the brand of Punisher. Then the guy that kills him at the end is wearing the brand of Punisher. I don't think Fisk has anything to do with those guys yet. So I'm going to guess that it was the fact that he did that interview with the girl is going to lead Matt to believe that maybe Fisk had something to do with it. And that might lead to a conflict with the two of them. But my guess is, and it's just a guess, I could be totally wrong. My guess is I don't think Fisk had anything to do with killing Hector. I don't think so at any rate. All right. Let's see. Connell writes, do you think Punisher will only appear in the last episode? No, I don't. And as a matter of fact, I don't think he'll be in the last episode. I think Punisher will show up for like 2 episodes, maybe 3, and then his part of the story will be done and he'll be gone before episode 8 or 9. Again, just guessing, but my guess is he'll be in there for a couple of episodes and then be gone before we get to the end of the series. That's my guess at any rate. Let's see here. Sir Z writes, how do you think they'll bring Jessica Jones in? Don't care. Hate the character. Hated her show. I would be perfectly fine if they don't bring Jessica Jones in, to be honest with you. I tried, guys. I tried that series, and I know all my friends liked it. All my friends liked it. My wife liked it. Everybody else liked it. I wanted to like it. I did not think, I think they had a tremendous villain. They had a great villain, but I didn't like the show all that much, and I ended up not liking the character all that much. So yeah, I kind of hope they don't bring her into it, to be honest with you. Or if they do, bring her in with a much better group of writers. That's just kind of my thought with it, but I don't know. We'll see. All right. Let's see. Last question of the night, because we've been going for over an hour now. Let's see. All right, we'll try this in last. The Inevitable Hulk writes, should they have concluded the apartment scene from the end? Should they have included, I'm assuming you meant included, not sincluded, the apartment scene from the end of episode 2? I don't know what you mean. Like, what do you mean include it? It already was in the end of episode 2. Anyway, I'll take one more because I don't understand what it is you're writing or what it is you're asking. Let's see here. Dan's Gaming writes, do we think that White Tiger maybe faked his death to protect him and his family? Well, no, and I'll tell you why. 2 big things kind of kill the idea that he faked his death. Number 1, having a guy do it while wearing a Punisher outfit, right? Like that's something that I think only viewers have been made in on, like getting a quick glimpse of the wrist or a quick glimpse of the neck. I don't think that's something Hector knew about. But here's the biggest thing. If you want to fake your death, you have to do it in front of witnesses, right? there was nobody there to see him get killed. And if you just want to say, let's just have people find my body, then you don't have to go through the whole charade and choreography of a guy jumping out of the bushes and going boom and right. Like, so now if he was in the middle of a city street somewhere and he wanted people to see him die to fake his own death, well, that's what you got to do. But like in a dark thing where there's nobody else around. So no, I unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to see that White Tiger faked his death. I mean, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Nobody's ever really dead, but so maybe he comes back, but I don't think he faked his death because, well, to fake it, you have to fake it for somebody, and there was nobody there to see it. So yeah, probably not faking his own death. And all right, guys, that'll do it for this installment of our Daredevil post-game show for episode 3 on week 2. That's a little bit confusing. Week 2, but it's the 3rd episode. Thanks so much for joining me here tonight, guys. Thank you to all of you guys who sent in questions. Number 1, because you gave us fun things to talk about. But number 2, you supported our channel as you did it. And we all thank you guys so much for that. Don't forget to come on back again next week. We'll do our post-game show again next week. Hopefully you guys will come and join us. We'll talk a little bit more and some less than spoiler details on the show tomorrow when I have Rob and Chris in with me as well. By the way, guys, just in case, maybe you just found us because we're talking about Daredevil. We have a daily movie talk show every day at 11 a.m. Los Angeles time that we stream live. Me, Robert Meyer Burnett, Chris Carr, Jonathan Ray, a whole bunch of us. It's like 1.5 to 2 hours long every day. Come on back and join us tomorrow as we have a fun time every single day. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. Thanks to everybody for joining me tonight. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.